Tomorrow, you can turn the page on policies that have put greed and irresponsibility before hard work and sacrifice. Tomorrow, you can choose policies that invest in our middle class, create new jobs, grow this economy so everybody has a chance to succeed. Not just the CEO, but the secretary and the janitor. Not just the factory owner, but the men and women who work the factory floors. Tomorrow you can put an end to the politics that would divide a nation just to win an election, that pits region against region, city against town, Republican against Democrat, that asks us to fear at a time when we need to hope. Tomorrow, at this defining moment in history, Virginia, you can give this country the change that we need. It starts here in Virginia. It starts here in Manassas. This is where change begins. Now, we began this journey in the depths of winter on the steps of the old state capitol in Springfield, Illinois. Like Manassas, there's a lot of history there. Abraham Lincoln served there for many years. Back then, we didn't have much money or many endorsements. We weren't given much of a chance by the polls or the pundits. We knew this was going to be a steep climb. But I also knew this. I knew that the size of our challenges had outstripped the capacity of a broken politics to solve. I was certain that Americans of every political stripe were hungry for new ideas, new leadership, a new kind of politics, one that favors common sense over ideology, one that focuses on those values and ideals that we hold in common as Americans. I was convinced that when we come together, our voices are more powerful than the most entrenched lobbyists or the most vicious political attacks or the full force of a status quo in Washington that wants to keep things just the way they are. And that's how we've come so far, so close. That's how you end up with 100,000 people on a Monday night in November. This happened because of you. That's how we're going to change this country, because of you. And that's why in these last 21 hours we can't afford to slow down or sit back or let up 1 minute, 1 second, not 1 moment. Even if it rains tomorrow, you can't let that stop you. You've got to wait in line. You've got to vote. You've got to take your friends, take your neighbors. We can't stop, not now, not when there's so much at stake. We are going to change America, Virginia, starting tomorrow. Yes, we can. We are in the middle of the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. 760,000 workers have lost their jobs so far this year. Businesses and families can't get credit, home values are falling, foreclosures are rising. Pensions are disappearing. It's harder to make the mortgage or fill up your gas tank or even pay the bills at the end of the month. So at the moment like this, the last thing we can afford is 4 more years of the same old, tired, worn-out economic theories that say as long as we give more and more to billionaires and millionaires and big corporations, prosperity will somehow trickle down on everybody else. The last thing we can afford is 4 more years of deregulation in the healthcare industry and the financial services industry so that consumers don't have basic protections and we put the entire economic system at risk. These are the economic theories that got us into this mess. They have not worked. It is time for a change. And that's why I'm running for President of the United States of America. Now, Virginia, on this last day, I want to just remind us, Senator McCain has served this country with great honor and distinction. He has been a worthy opponent. I'm grateful for the condolences that he sent me today with the news of my grandmother. I thank you all, by the way, for those same prayers and thoughts that you've sent me. And Senator McCain can point to a few moments over the past 8 years where he's broken from George Bush on things like torture and climate change. He can legitimately claim to have broken with the president. He deserves credit with that. But when it comes to the central issue of this election, when it comes to the economy, the plain truth is that Senator McCain has stood with this president every step of the way. He hasn't been a maverick on the economy. He's been a sidekick. After 21 months, after 3 debates, Senator McCain still has not been able to tell the American people a single major thing he'd do differently from George Bush when it comes to the economy. I mean, you watch the ads. He doesn't point to how he's going to move to the future. All he does is talk about me. But I think the American people have come to understand that if John McCain wants to give $700,000 tax cuts to the average Fortune 500 CEO, that's not change. It's not change when he wants to give $200 billion to the biggest corporations, or $4 billion to the oil companies despite record profits, or $300 billion to the same Wall Street banks that got us into this mess. It's not change when the tax plan he comes up with doesn't give a penny of relief to more than 100 million middle-class Americans. Look, here's the fact, Virginia. We've tried it John McCain's way, just like we've tried it George Bush's way. And deep down, Senator McCain knows that, which is why his campaign said that if we keep on talking about the economy, we're going to lose. Which is why we keep on talking about the economy. Meanwhile, Senator McCain's campaign spent these last few weeks calling me everything but a name of God, but a child of God. Because that's how you play the game in Washington. When you can't win on your ideas, you try to tear your opponent down. You try to make a big election about small things. So we may see a little bit more of that over the next 21 hours. You may have to talk to your grandma or your parents or your spouse. They may have been hearing some negative ads. You're going to have to be ambassadors on our behalf. But that kind of say anything, do anything politics that's calculated to divide and distract, to tear us apart instead of bringing us together, we have a chance to beat back that kind of politics in this election, not just in the short term. We can put an end to it in the long term. We can show that negative politics is no match for the will and determination, the decency of the American people. That's what we've tried to show in this election, that you can keep your dignity, keep your decency, and still win. That's what this election's partly about. We can prove that we're more than a collection of states or just a collection of individuals. We're a union that over decades we've strived to perfect. That's who we are. That's the country we need to be right now. Look, Virginia, I know these are difficult times. And as we enter into Election Day, I think all of us understand that change isn't going to happen overnight. But I also know that we faced difficult times before. The American story has never been about things coming easy. It's been about rising to the moment when the moment was hard, about rejecting fear and division for unity of purpose. That's how we overcame war and depression. That's how we won the great struggles for civil rights and women's rights and workers' rights. That's how we'll write the next chapter of the great American story, and it will start tomorrow here in Virginia. And part of that process is to understand, just as Tim Kaine and Mark Warner understand, that if we want to meet the challenges of this moment, we're going to have to get beyond the old ideological debates, the old divides between left and right. Listen, we don't need bigger government.